She said I wasn't emotionally available, but she hadn't asked how I was in months. Not once. Not when I came home later than usual. Not when I stopped turning the TV on. Not even when I started sleeping on the far edge of the bed like I might fall off just to escape the silence. Jenna stopped seeing me long before I ever went quiet. Her attention had drifted to whatever, or whoever, was lighting up her phone after midnight. Some guy, probably the one with the lame jokes that made her giggle when she thought I wasn't listening. I heard everything. That kind of laugh, it used to be mine. It had become a rhythm, her asleep on the couch, phone still glowing, me pacing the bedroom alone. I'd open the closet some nights, not even sure what I was looking for. Maybe some proof that this wasn't what our life had become. That maybe she still loved me enough to come to bed first, or at all. But that night, I didn't open the closet to wonder. I opened it to pack. The zipper on the suitcase felt louder than her laugh. Each shirt I folded was a memory she'd forgotten. Every item I placed into my bag felt like a conversation I'd waited too long to have. I didn't slam drawers. I didn't make noise. This wasn't rage. It was release. She was there, lying on the couch, one leg curled up beneath her, her phone slipping from her fingers. The screen was still unlocked, his name at the top of their thread. I didn't even need to read it. I had read the end of this story already, night after night. I put my key on the hook like I had 100 times before. Only this time, it would stay there. One note on the table. 7 words. You were right, I'm gone. And just like that, I closed the door behind me. Not with a bang, not with a shout. Just the quiet click of a man choosing himself for the first time in a long time. Derek didn't become distant all at once. It was gradual. So gradual that even he couldn't name the moment he first started pulling away. Maybe it was that Tuesday she forgot his birthday. Maybe it was when she scrolled through Instagram during dinner instead of asking how his pitch went. Or maybe it was when he realized she no longer touched him without purpose. No hand on his back as she passed him in the kitchen. No lingering goodnight kiss. Not even a brush of fingers under the table. He couldn't remember the last time she reached for him just to feel close. But Jenna noticed none of that. To her, the problem was always Derek. You're here, but it's like you're not, she said one night, exasperated, tossing her phone onto the coffee table like it offended her more than the words she used. He had opened his mouth to respond. But what was the point? She didn't want the truth. She wanted him to chase her back into the version of them that no longer existed. So he just nodded and poured another drink. She had a way of making neglect feel like it was his fault. If he didn't react to her snide remarks, he was emotionally flat. If he asked for space, he was withdrawing. If he confronted her about always being on her phone, she called him paranoid. Her criticisms weren't loud, but they were sharp, like little cuts she pretended not to notice making. The irony was cruel. She accused him of being absent, yet it was her who disappeared behind a screen night after night. She used to look at him with curiosity, like he was someone she wanted to understand. Now her eyes rarely lifted from the glow of a conversation she swore was just a friend. Derek knew better. You can always tell when laughter isn't meant for you. What broke him wasn't a single betrayal, but a pattern of dismissal. He would speak, and she'd barely register it. He'd try to tell her about his day, and she'd nod while typing. When he asked what she wanted for dinner, she'd shrug without looking up. And when he finally stopped asking, she never noticed. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was loud, with everything unsaid. There were no big fights, no slammed doors, no screaming in the middle of the night. There was only the slow erosion of something that used to matter, until it didn't. And that's what hurt the most. Not the betrayal, but how easy it had become for her to ignore the pieces of him that used to light her up. There were moments when Derek wanted to scream, to shake her and ask what happened to the woman who used to race him to the shower in the mornings, or hide notes in his jacket pocket before he left for work. But even if he did, she wouldn't hear him. She was already tuned into another frequency. She didn't see him anymore. She saw the version of him that fit her new narrative. The one where he was cold, closed off, unloving. It was easier that way. Blame came with clarity. Guilt came with questions. And Jenna had no room for questions. So Derek gave her what she needed. He played the role of the withdrawn partner. He stopped asking to talk. Stopped suggesting they go out. Stopped reminding her that they used to be a team. He withdrew. But not because he was lost. Because he was done. She thought his distance was a flaw. But it was the beginning of his freedom. It happened on an unremarkable Wednesday. The kind of night where nothing extraordinary should have happened. No argument, no dramatic revelation, no slammed doors. But sometimes, the loudest realizations come wrapped in silence. Derek had come home from work later than usual, but Jenna didn't notice. She was curled up on the couch, her legs tucked under her, the glow of her phone lighting her face in pulses. She didn't look up when he entered. Didn't ask if he'd eaten. Didn't pause her scrolling long enough to acknowledge that the man walking through the door was the same one she once said she couldn't live without. He stood in the hallway a moment longer than usual, watching her laugh at something she was reading, probably something he hadn't been invited to know. The room was dim, save for the flicker of the television and the sharp light from her screen. The space felt foreign, same furniture, same scent, same layout. But it no longer felt like a home. It was a waiting room where love had once lived. She laughed again, light, flirty, familiar in a way that made Derek's stomach twist. He hadn't heard her laugh like that in months. Not with him. And in that moment, something quiet and final settled into his bones. It wasn't rage, it wasn't heartbreak, it was recognition. He wasn't hers anymore. Maybe he hadn't been for a long time. He walked past her into the bedroom without a word. The sound of the closet door sliding open was the only clue that something inside him had shifted. He didn't pack that night, not yet. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bed and looked around at a room they had shared for years. Framed photos, matching lamps, the book she had never finished on her nightstand. But none of it held meaning anymore. It was a museum of a life that no longer felt real. Derek lay back on the bed fully clothed, hands folded. Over his chest, eyes open in the dark. He could hear Jenna's voice faintly from the living room, soft and teasing, meant for someone else. She was still texting when she fell asleep on the couch. The light of the screen dimmed, her breathing steady. That was when he rose. He didn't move quickly or with urgency. This wasn't an escape. It was a clean, conscious decision. The kind that doesn't come with second guesses. He stood at the bedroom doorway and looked at her one last time. She looked peaceful, unaware, still clutching the phone even in sleep. There was a time when she used to hold his hand like that. And right there, in the silence of his own resignation, Derek made his decision. He would leave. Not tomorrow. Not after another fight. He would leave quietly, in a way that spoke louder than anything he could ever say aloud. The decision, once made, didn't tremble. It stood firm inside Derek like a steel beam set in concrete. He waited until the small apartment was completely still, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional twitch of Jenna's leg on the couch. She had fallen asleep the same way she did most nights now, phone in hand, blanket half pulled over her, her face turned toward the screen like it was something sacred. Derek moved deliberately without hesitation. He pulled the 2 suitcases from the hall closet, the ones they used for weekend getaways back when they still tried. He didn't take much, just what he needed. A few changes of clothes, his toothbrush, the novel he never finished reading. He packed like a man who wasn't coming back, but didn't need to make a show of it. Quiet exits didn't need to be loud to be final. There was no anger in his movements, only resolve. He didn't open drawers with force or rip clothes from hangers. He folded his shirts neatly, laid his shoes side by side, zipped each bag smoothly. His goal wasn't to disrupt her world. It was to remove himself from it. In the kitchen, he paused by the counter. The ceramic mug she always used still sat beside the sink. Lipstick stain, faint. Even now, there was something about it that made his chest tighten, but not enough to change his mind. He found a pen and tore a page from the notepad they used for grocery lists. His handwriting was steady as he wrote the 7 words he'd been carrying inside him for weeks. "You were right. I'm gone." He placed the note dead center on the kitchen counter. Impossible to miss, but without drama. Then he reached for the key. It hung on the same hook it always had, the little metal ring catching the faint glow of a street lamp outside. He held it for a second longer than necessary, then set it gently beside the note. His footsteps barely made a sound on the hardwood floor. Jenna didn't stir as he passed her. She remained asleep, the phone still glowing faintly in her palm like a lover she wasn't ready to let go of. Derek paused at the door, turned the knob slowly, and stepped out into the cool night. The hallway smelled faintly of someone's cooking and fresh laundry. It felt more like home than the apartment ever had in the past year. He didn't look back. There was nothing behind him that needed remembering. Outside, the air was sharp but refreshing. He loaded his bags into the trunk of his car with the same calm he'd carried all night. No trembling hands, no racing heart, just quiet freedom. As the engine turned over, he felt no urge to cry or scream or regret. He simply drove, past the familiar streets, the intersections he once knew by heart, and into something undefined but finally his. The apartment felt different when Jenna woke up. Too quiet, too still, like the building itself was holding its breath. She blinked into the hazy light of early morning, reaching instinctively for her phone before even sitting up. The screen was dark now, battery drained from a night of secrets and silences. She groaned softly, stretched, and only then realized the blanket had slipped off her shoulders, sometime in the night. Her neck ached, her back was stiff. She reached out toward the armrest, expecting to find Derek's hoodie tossed there like it always was when he sat beside her. But it wasn't. There was no sign of him. Not on the couch, not in the kitchen, not in the gentle, mundane sounds of his morning routine. The kettle boiling, the low hum of sports radio, the shuffle of feet across the tile floor. She stood slowly, the air cool against her skin as she padded toward the bedroom. Her heart wasn't racing yet. It was too early. Her brain hadn't caught up to her body's instinct. And then she opened the closet. Half empty. His side, gone. The hangers that once held his jacket swung lightly, hollow, like wind chimes made of absence. His cologne no longer lingered. She stepped back, her throat suddenly dry. In the kitchen, she found the note. 7 words. No accusations, no explanation. Just closure, delivered without fanfare. "You were right. I'm gone." She read it twice, as if it might change. As if maybe she had dreamed the whole thing and this was just some leftover grocery list scribble that happened to read like heartbreak. But the handwriting was unmistakable. Derek's. Calm, firm, final. Panic bloomed slowly, not like a fire, but like rising water, quiet, inescapable. She tried calling him, but her phone was still dead. She fumbled for the charger, hands shaking now, plugging it in with the kind of urgency that only hits after it's far too late. When it turned on, her thumb flew to his name. But the call didn't go through. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same thing. Blocked. Across town, Derek stood in the kitchen of his new apartment, watching sunlight filter through unfamiliar blinds. There were no voices here. No tension humming in the walls. Just the occasional creak of the old hardwood floors and the soft clink of a coffee spoon against ceramic. He wasn't celebrating. There was no music playing, no triumphant grin on his face. But he was at peace. He poured his coffee slowly, savoring the silence. Every movement was his own, every breath unburdened. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't walking on emotional eggshells. He sipped from the mug, watching the steam curl upward. No regrets, no backward glances. Jenna, somewhere back in that old apartment, was probably still staring at the note, trying to figure out if he meant it. He did. And now, she'd finally understand. He hadn't been distant. He'd already left.